Hi class, in this video we're going to go over chapter 30 or chapter 17 in your textbook, Money, Growth, and Inflation. Alright, so first let's start with a couple basic definitions. So know what's inflation and what's deflation. Now we talked about this a long time ago. So inflation is anytime you have this overall increase in prices, that's inflation. Deflation is the opposite. When you have a decrease in prices, that's deflation. And then hyperinflation, this term is new. So hyperinflation is anytime you have very high inflation, that's called hyperinflation. Now normally hyperinflation is defined any 1 year. If you have more than 200% increase in inflation, that's called hyperinflation. Or you have 50% per month increase. That's a hyperinflation too. So either one, even though they're very different numbers, but just remember, if it's a very high inflation, it's called hyperinflation. Those are very rare in the world economy, but you do see them from time to time. Okay, so if you look at the U.S. economy, now for U.S. economy, from 2005 to 2015, the economy has been seeing very low inflation. So it's an average about 1.2% per year. I mean, even after 2015, the inflation has been still pretty low. So right now, our inflation is hovering about 2% per year. So not too high, now, well, still pretty low. Okay, now this used to be very high or much higher. So in 1970s, our inflation was average at about 7.8% per year. Now, if you guys look at the reason why that is, a big factor of it was because the oil price. Back in 1970s, there was an oil embargo in America, which pushed the price of oil increased higher, and then because oil is the foundation used to produce many other goods, so most of the good economy all see a price increase because oil price is increasing. Okay, so that's one reason why 1970 was especially bad for inflations, and also President Nixon was in office. We're fighting the Vietnam War to the end of it, and then we're spending way more money than we had. So government was borrowing more money that also increased our inflation. All right, little comparison here. So this is the 2015, the inflation rate in the world. So U.S. is about 0.1%, which is very, very, very low. China 1.5%, India 4.9%, Russia 15%. Big part of it because the sanctions U.S. put on Russia. And then Venezuela was 84% back in 2015. Now in 2017, this number is about 300% per year. Okay, so Venezuela for the last couple of years and currently has been in a very hyperinflation. The highest, however, wasn't Venezuela. The highest, however, was in history was back in 2008 in Zimbabwe. So in Zimbabwe in 2008, their inflation was 24,000%. Now this is on the low end of the estimate. Most economists believe the inflation in Zimbabwe in 2008. By the way, this is February, right? So for the entire year, Zimbabwe inflation 2008 was about 11 million%. Okay, the highest in history. All right, so reason why that is, so one of the early explanation of this inflation is called the classical theory of money. So it just says the more money you have, the lower the value it will be, therefore the higher the price is. So guys, think money like anything else. The more you have it, the lower the value. So for money, same thing. The more money you have it, the lower the value for money. And when the value for money is lowered, that means the price will go up. So if you guys think about this value for money, so value of money versus the price of everything else, they are related. Because how do you know how valuable the money is? It's how much stuff you can buy, right? Which is the price of the good. So anytime price goes up, that means value for money goes down. And anytime price goes down, that means the value for money goes up. So this was this classical theory of money was used to explain the long-run determinant of money of the price level, which is the quantity theory of money. So the more money you have it, the lower the value for money, therefore the higher price level, and then the less money you have it, did I say it wrong? So the more money you have it, the lower the value, the higher the price level. The less the money you have, the higher the value for money, and the lower the price level. Okay, and it's also used to explain our inflation. All right, so this inflation here is remember, this is it's not just about a one good, one services. This is price level of everything. So everything we produce in the economy. So if price level increases, the average price level increases. That's the inflation in the economy. So this impacts the entire economy, and then this happens because the value for money is changed, and the value for money is the value of the medium of exchange. So inflation is the increase in price level, which means lower the value for money, and then which means every dollar you have can now buy less stuff whenever you have inflation. Think about how much money you can buy with a dollar today, and then compared to how much money you can buy, how much stuff you can buy with a dollar today, compared to how much stuff you can buy back in 1950 with a dollar. Now, back then, you can buy more stuff with a dollar than today, right? Because we have inflation been going on for the last 70 years. Okay, so remember, inflation will lower the value for money, which means you can buy less stuff. Now, next, know what's the money demand. So money demand will show you how much wealth people want to hold in liquid form. So how much cash people want to hold on to. So for this cash over here, it depends on the availability of credit card. So if you have a credit card, you don't need to hold on to cash anymore, right? So nowadays, if you ask most people to open the wallet, by the way, don't do that, okay? They might think you try to rob them, okay? But if you look at people's wallet, you don't see that much cash anymore, right? Most people just carry cards everywhere. So with availability of credit cards, that will impact how much cash we have on hand, and also the availability of ATM machine can also impact how much cash you have. Because if you carry a cash and if you lose it, it's gone. But if you keep your money in the ATM machine, you will never lose it, right? So you can always call the bank and reimburse for you. So those are very safe. So with more ATM machines, people also tend to carry less cash. And the interest rate is also important because if the interest rate is higher, so imagine that Bank of America offer you a 10% interest rate on your saving, and you know what you do? You hold on to less cash, and you put more money in the demand deposit. Because for demand deposit, you get an interest on it. And also, the average price level of the economy can also can always impact how much cash we have on hand. So when the price level is higher, so everything is more expensive, then you tend to carry more cash on hand. But if the price level is cheaper, so everything's cheaper now, then you tend to carry less cash on you. So for example, let's say you're going to a very poor country. Let's say you go to where? So let me think of a poor country. A really poor country. Alright, so let's pick Zimbabwe. So Zimbabwe is a very poor country, so let's suppose you go to Zimbabwe. Everything's very cheap over there, right? So you wouldn't carry like $1,000 cash on you. You might just carry a couple dollars on you because everything's cheap. But if you imagine go to Europe, let's say Switzerland, everything's very expensive, then you tend to carry more cash on you. Okay? Alright, so because of these reasons here, your demand for money, the curve is downward sloping. So now on the other side, the supply for money is determined by our Federal Reserve. And then for Federal Reserve, this supply for money is perfectly vertical because they're not trying to make a profit. Now, if this is individual companies, when they have profit motive driven, then you might see an upward sloping supply curve. But because this is the government and their goal is not to make a profit, their goal is just to set the supply for money in the economy. So the supply curve for money is just vertically sloped, perfect vertical. So in the long run, between the supply for money, vertical line, and then demand for money, downward sloping, you're gonna have this intersection. And this intersection will determine what the price level is in the economy. So let me show you this very weird looking graph, probably the most strange looking graph in the entire book. That you see two, two vertical axes, right? Different labels. Now on the left hand side, that's the value for money, which is denoted as 1 divided by P. And then on the right hand side, you have the actual P, the price level. So even though they're two different axes, but they all shows you the similar information. It shows, so on the left hand here shows you how much value the money is, which remember we said before, to see how much the value for money is, you want to compare to what the price level is, right? So between money, the value for money, and then price level, you see this inverse relationship. So value for money equals to the 1 divided by price level. And then on the right hand side, we have our the actual price level. So if you look at the numbers here, it's also a little strange. Now on the left hand side, it looks just like before. If you're going up, the number keeps going up. But because your value for money equals to 1 divided by P, and then between the value for money and then price level, they are inversely related. Therefore, on the right hand side, the number will get smaller as you go higher, right? So it looks pretty strange, but don't worry. The best thing to do, don't look at this at the same time. Just use your hand to cover it one side and look at one side only. Okay. All right. So when you have a demand supply curve intersecting, this intersection will determine what the price level is. So price level is 2. And then if you look at the other side, it will also tell you what the value for money is, which is 1 divided by 2. So 1 divided by the price level. Okay, so again, the price level and then the value for money will be determined by the supply of money and then the demand for money. Now, let's suppose our Federal Reserve decide to double the supply of money. So increase supply for money, which means we can do two things. So either print more money, and then just dump it in the market, so give it to everybody, or we can do this open market purchase. Now remember we mentioned this in the previous chapter. This one, ever the Federal Reserve buy bond. So when they buy bond, that's giving cash to the public. Okay, that's the increased money supply. Now vice versa, when they sell bond, so open market sale, that's taking cash away from public. There will be a decrease in supply, decreasing money supply. Okay. All right. So when Federal Reserve double money supply, this will shift our supply curve to the right, which means price level increases, so everything getting more expensive, and then the value for money goes down. And this is how it looks like. Okay. So we're shifting our supply curve to the right. We have a new intersection, point B. So at point B, price level goes down from 2 to 4. That means price level is increasing. At the same time, the value for money goes down from 1/2 to 1/4. So the value for money is going down. Okay, so again, remember this and this, they're inversely related. Okay, so price level goes up, the value for money goes down. Now, so in summary, the quantity theory of money, it just says the quantity of money available in the economy will determine the price level. So how much the price is depends on how much money we have in the economy. The more money you have, the more money available in the economy, the higher the price level is, and the less money available in the economy, the lower the price level is. And then back in 2008, the reason why Zimbabwe was having record inflation was because the government was printing record amount of money. And it got so bad, the government couldn't keep up with printing more money. And then in the summer 2008, the government decided that every month, instead of printing more money, they were just printing new money. And then for the new money they're printing out, every new money, every month, will have 3 extra zero behind it. So like, this, so suppose your $1 in June will become $1,000 in July, and it will become $1 million. Running out rules, $1 million in August. So money was getting bigger, right? But at the same time, that means your price level is increasing, and increasing. So everything getting very expensive. So imagine in Zimbabwe in 2008, if you go buy like a loaf of bread, just like regular bread, you go to a store that might cost you like $3 billion. So everything was very, very expensive. Okay, so even though people have money, but it doesn't make them rich. because they're still very poor because everything's very expensive. All right, so the reason why this is the way it is because it's an adjustment process. That if you just keep putting more money into the economy, even though in the short run might help induce the economy, try to improve the economy a little bit in the short run, but in the long run it will adjust. The economy will self-adjust. So we increase the supply for money, so more money available. With more money available, our consumption will increase, and then investment will increase. Okay, so which means we might have a better economy in the short run. But because consumption increase, investment increase, there's a higher demand for goods and service in the economy. Higher demand, as we know from the previous chapters, this will cause the price level to increase. Now, when price level increase, this is inflation in the economy. With inflation going on, then we have a new level of money demand in the economy. And then what it does, that would just, it just keep pushing economy more to the right. Well, not more to the right, keep pushing the quantity of money more to the right, but your price levels keep changing, but nothing else changes. Okay, so you still have the same amount of good because everything's more expensive now. Okay, all right. So notice called a classical dichotomy. So there is a separation between nominal variables and then real variables. So nominal variables are measured in your monetary unit. So how much money you have, that's your monetary variable. Real variable are the good and service measured in the real unit. So how many apple you have, how many banana you have, how much stuff you can buy with the money you have. That's your real variable. So classical dichotomy says that there should be a separation between the nominal variable and real variable. So whenever you guys think about, what is how much money you have, how wealthy you are, how rich you are, don't just think about how much money you have. Think about how much good and service you can buy with the money you have. And that's going to be a very important point. So imagine you're working full time now, and then your company like very much like you. So very much like you, what kind of word is that? Let me open a new page. Hold on. Let me see. Can I get a new page on this? How can you erase this? Oh, here we go. Alright, so let's suppose our income for this month, income for this year is going to be $50,000. And let's suppose next year your boss love you, your boss give you a raise, and your new income is going to be $100,000. We'll feel pretty good, right? You have more money now. But what if the price of everything else, price all, is also increased by 2 times? Then are you better off or you're worse off? Then you probably just same as before, right? Because your income goes up by the same amount as the price level increases. So there's no impact on how much stuff you can buy. So in this case here, your nominal variable is increasing, you have more money now, but the real variable stay the same. You can still buy just the same amount of good compared to before. Okay? Alright, so that's called classical dichotomy, that there's a separation between the nominal variable and the real variable. Now, when you try to change your monetary system, so increasing or decreasing your money supply, this will cause a change in your nominal variable. So it causes a change in how much money you have, but it wouldn't change your real variables. So how much good and service you have in the economy, it will still stay the same. Because the real variables, the part that's really affecting our economy, your real GDP, can be only impacted by the real variables such as land, labor, capital, and technology. So only those 4 factors can change your real variables. Everything else, if you just money change, that's your nominal variables. So there's a term called a monetary neutrality. It says change in money supply does not impact our real variable. So by just having more money in the economy, you wouldn't have more labor, more land, more capital, or better technology. Look at Zimbabwe in 2008. They had a lot of money supply, right? Whole bunch of money supply, but the country is still poor because the money supply itself does not impact how much land, how much labor, how much capital, and how much technology you have in the economy. So your monetary neutrality is true in the long run, because in the long run, your real GDP is only impacted by these four factors. But in the short run, monetary neutrality might not be true, because in the short run, the economy in the short run can be influenced by how much money we have in the economy. All right, so velocity so this is the only formula you need to remember in this chapter. It says velocity equals to p times y divided by m. Another way to write it, you might see in your book, is m times v equals to p times y. They're the same formula, right? Just moving the m to this side. So velocity of money, it measures how often does money change hand. That's called velocity for money. So suppose you take a dollar bill, suppose this dollar bill is changing hand in the economy 15 times in a year. So you spend it, give to somebody else, and somebody else spend it, give to another person keeps spending money, give to somebody else. So let's suppose this money is changed hand 15 times, and that's called the velocity of money. So how often does the money change hand? So velocity for money equals to the price level, so the price of everything, times real GDP, divided by your money supply, the quantity of money. Now, by the way, guys, if you look at this term here, p times y, this is your nominal GDP. Okay, this y here, that's your real GDP. So remember, real GDP is how much stuff you have, right? So nominal GDP is the monetary value of how much stuff you have. So real GDP just y, and then p times y is your nominal GDP. Now, if you look at our two lines over here with our money supply and the nominal GDP, for U.S. economy, they tend to go hand in hand until 1990s happens, but they still goes about the same levels, so it still goes increasing overall. But the velocity for money has been pretty stable. So how often do money change hand? Is relatively the same, almost never change. So for velocity for money, it says is always stable. So we can say velocity is fixed. So this never change. And then how often money change hand? Let's go back to our formula we had before. So m times v equals to p times y. Now, guys, let me show a little bit of a business calculus. You might be doing this in the near future. If you take a derivative on each side, so dm dt. So taking each variable with a derivative again with respect against time. So see how they change. Okay. By the way, this is plus. Yeah, once you do derivative, the plus sign, the multiply sign become plus sign. Okay, so py. All right, so we said the sense of velocity for money is pretty much never change. Go back. All right, so this is constant. So this is equal to 0. Then dm over dt, so the change in money supply over time equals to the change in price level over time plus the change in real GDP over time. Now, also we said monetary neutrality. We said that money supply does not change our real GDP because real GDP is only impacted by the real factors. So your land, labor, capital, and technology. So we're going to say dy dt is also relatively the same if nothing else changes. Okay, so therefore you just have dm over dt equals to dp over dt. So this says the change in, that's an ugly change, the change in money supply equal to the change in the price level, which is what we'll be seeing for the longest time, right? So the more money you have it, that will only cause the inflation to change, right? That's all it says. It just says if you change your money supply, it wouldn't change your velocity, wouldn't change your real GDP. It will only change the price level. So more money supply means more inflation. Lower money supply means lower inflation. Okay. All right. So remember that. Okay. Let's continue. By the way, there is a little case study over here about hyperinflation 1920s in Europe. Take a little time, read over the section in the book on this part. It's pretty interesting. Okay, and then really this if you look at the history of the world, especially recent histories, modern histories, a big part of it has something to do with economics. So many of the economists believe, and especially some of the historians believe, the rise of Adolf Hitler was because this hyperinflation in 1920s. Okay, so guys, go home, read it. It's a pretty interesting read. Okay, all right. Next, inflation tax. So inflation tax. Now we don't have any tax actually called inflation tax. But this is one of those unintended consequences that can cause our tax to go up whenever there's an inflation in the economy. So whenever government print more cash or print more money, price level increases. When price level increases, that means how much money you have in your wallet are now less valuable. So that is like paying a tax for it. So it's not like you're actually paying tax. It just means that how much money you have goes down because government print more money. That's the same as taking cash away from you, right? Because you have less cash now. You have less real variable now. That's called inflation tax. All right. So next, notice a Fisher effect. So Fisher effect apply this monetary neutrality principle. It says that your real interest rate equals to nominal interest rate minus inflation. So imagine go to the bank and then let's say Bank of America. They currently offer you a 10% nominal interest rate on your saving account. Now, should you do it? Well, that depends on the inflation, right? So imagine that your nominal interest rate is 10%, your inflation is 15%. That means if you save your money with Bank of America, your money will grow by 10%, but the price of everything else increased by 15%. So you're not better off, you're actually worse off if you save the money. So your real interest rate, your real profit, is a minus 5%. Okay, so think the real interest rate as the real profit for investment. If it's positive, it's good. If it's negative, it's bad. Okay, all right. So we'll talk about this. So if you look at our inflation and a nominal interest rate, they tend to go hand in hand. The only time that's really seen a big difference of it, especially recently, is this over here. That for the last, I want to say 7-8 years now, our nominal interest rate has been almost zero, but there were inflation in the economy. So in the last 5 to 7 years, the real interest rate has been negative for the last 5 to 7 years because inflation, the red curve, is more than our nominal interest rate, the blue line. So if you save your money in the bank, you don't make a profit, you're actually losing money. Okay. Now, if you look at this period over here, this is a good period because now we have nominal interest rate more than inflation. They're actually making a profit out of it. Okay, so positive real interest rate, that's good. Negative real interest rate, that means you're losing money. All right, so the cause of inflation. So inflation is not free. So notice the inflation fallacy. That inflation take away people's purchasing power. So with high inflation, you can buy less stuff. With low inflation, you can buy more stuff. But this does shift the power in the economy. So if your inflation goes up in a short span of time, sellers get more, buyer pays more. So sellers become more powerful compared to buyers. All right. Next, know what's a shoe leather cost? So shoe leather cost is another cost for inflation. It just says that imagine that you have to go to your bank, withdraw money out every time price increases. So with inflation going on, people will go to the banks more often. Now, when they go to the bank more often, there's a wear and tear on the shoes they have, right? So that's called a shoe leather cost. So you might be paying more to buy new shoes just because you're going to the bank more often. Now, shoe leather cost it's not just how much it costs you to buy new shoes. By the way, you should ask my wife; she'll tell you how much it costs to buy new shoes. Okay, it's not just how much it costs to buy new shoes. It's also think about the cost of timing. Right? You're gonna spend your time to go to the bank. You're gonna drive your car to go to the bank. So all this inefficiency, try to get your cash out because inflation goes up. That's called shoe leather cost. And then next is called menu cost. It's the cost of actually changing the price. That's called menu cost. So imagine you have a business and then you print all the prices on the menu, but when the prices change, you're gonna change your menu, right? But that's a cost associated with it, right? That's called a menu cost. So inflation can also cause a menu cost. That's why, guys, if you go to some restaurants sometimes, when they show you the menu, if you look carefully, I mean, they have like a menu over here, and then each item over here, right? And then they have a piece of paper taped right here to cover up the old prices and with a new price on it, right? That's the menu cost. Okay, so the cost of changing prices on the menu. All right, so we talk about this. All right, so your inflation also will have an induced tax distortion. More than often with our economy, when you have an inflation, people tend to pay higher taxes with inflation, because for our tax system is called a progressive rate tax system. Now, if you guys study 2302, we're going to go into more detail of this. So progressive rate means the more income you make, the more tax you pay. Now, when we say more income, we don't mean the real income. We mean the nominal income. So in our previous example, that if your income is doubled, so from 50,000 to 100,000, how much tax you pay will be increased more than will be more than doubled how much tax you pay, because the percentage is actually increasing as the more money you make. So if you're making $50,000, you might be paying just like a 10% income rate tax rate. But if you're making 100,000, you might be paying like a 25% on the additional income. So how much tax you pay if your income is doubled is more than doubled. Okay, so that's a distortion on your income, and that's because of inflation. Now, inflation also have a penalty on investment. That with inflation, if you're making any profit out of investment, you're gonna pay a higher tax. So one example you can think about is, think about if you're buying a house, not for living in it, just for like an investment house. So let's suppose do this. So let's suppose I buy an investment house, and this house so today is year 2000. I buy a house and it cost me $100,000, very cheap. And then let's suppose I hold on to the house. So by 2018, let's suppose the value for the house doubled. So now the house is for $200,000. Now, the reason why the price increased, there can be many factors. Market's better, there are more buyers. I mean, maybe the neighborhood is better, but also inflation's in here too. So let's suppose the only reason why the price increased was because of inflation. So everything else getting more expensive, so the price of everything else doubled, and therefore my investment house also doubled in price. Now, however, when I sell the house in year 2018, I will have a profit of $100,000. Right? That's the how much I sell this 2018 compared to how much I purchased 2000. But for this profit, remember, that's not a real profit. That's just inflation. But however, that's a nominal value for it, I gotta pay a tax on it, and that's called capital gain tax. So that's why many investors don't like to have a this. They don't like this penalty on capital gain tax, because if you hold on to investment for too long, especially with high inflation going on, you might be paying up a higher tax in the economy. So you're getting less money in return. Okay, so in this case here, then I'm making zero profit because of inflation, but now government says pay tax for it. I'm actually losing money. All right. Also, your tax treatment on interest income can also be changed with inflation. So with high inflation, this will discourage people from saving. Let me show you why that is, because how much interest you get is also subject to your tax. So we have two scenarios here. So scenario economy A, economy B. So in economy A, in both economy, the real interest in the economy is 4%. So everybody is getting a profit of 4%. Now let's suppose for economy A, they have a 0% inflation. So nominal rate is 4%, and they have a 25% tax. So whatever profit you pay 25% of it. So you're gonna pay 25% of the 4% here. So you're gonna pay a 1%. That's a tax. So how much your after-tax income is? It will be a 9% after-tax income. Now adjusted for inflation, they have zero inflation, so you still have 3% profit by end of the year. Now if you have a high inflation economy, so they have let's say they have an 8% inflation, so the nominal rate is 12%. Well, sounds pretty good, right? It's not that good, because the reason why it's 12% because they have a high inflation going on. That means the price of every sales is increasing. Now there's still a 25% interest, still 25% tax on it. So the 25% of 12 is 3%. This will be paid for tax. So after tax, you're gonna have 9% back. Well, 9% sounds pretty good compared to 3%, right? But remember, you still have this 8% inflation here. So adjusted for inflation, then the real profit is only 1%. So with inflation, consumers pay a higher tax, a much higher tax. With a higher tax, then you're going to be worse off. Okay, so that's a distortion on tax and interest. All right, so money is used as a yardstick to see to measure our economic transactions. So the most important job for the economy, for the Federal Reserve, is to ensure the reliability of money and also the stability of the value of money. So whenever the Federal Reserve increase money supply, this will cause inflation in the economy, which means it will take away the value of the money that we have in the economy. So money becomes worthless, or not worthless, but worthless. When you have unexpected inflation, so we don't expect inflation, but inflation does happen. This will redistribute wealth among the population. So if you have unexpected inflation, if you borrow money, you are better off. But if you lend money out, you are worse off. So imagine we have two people in the economy. Creditor and borrower. Now imagine our borrower will borrow $100 from creditor, and this will be year 1. And then in year 2, we promise to pay back $110, right? So that's like a 10% interest rate. Now imagine what if the inflation in the economy in a year is going to be 100% inflation. So by the way, this is unexpected, okay? So unexpected inflation 100%. That means by end of the year, how much money you borrow, this $100 you borrow at the beginning of the year. Oh, I don't want that. Let me color. This $100 borrowed by beginning of the year with inflation is equivalent. It's equivalent to $200, but you're only paying back $110. So it's unexpected inflation. The borrower is better off because you have the money, and the money is depreciating, right? So when you pay the money back, you're paying back less amount compared to before. Now, vice versa, if you have unexpected deflation, then the creditor will be better off. Okay, so remember this: with inflation, borrower is better off. With deflation, the creditor is better off. Okay. Now, sometimes a small and predictable amount of deflation might be good. Again, the keyword here is might be good. It's not guaranteed. But more than often, you guys can read this the Freeman rule. So it says moderate deflation will lower the nominal interest rate, so make interest rate cheaper. Reduce the cost of holding money, so people tend to hold on to more money, spend more money, and also might increase on investment because your interest rate is lower now. It also reduce your shoe leather cost because why even put the money in the bank if it just deflate, right? Just hold on to it, spend it, so that reduce your shoe leather cost. Now that's a moderate deflation, but again, this might be desirable because more than often, if you have a deflation going on, you still have to pay for manual cost to change the prices of everything. There's still changes in the relative prices, but the most important part is that the reason why you have a deflation because there might be a border macroeconomic difficulties in the economy. By the way, this just sounds very dim now because it's really bad. Okay, so think like this: suppose the economy goes down today. So suppose our economy. Let me put this up. So, come on, go back. Draw. All right, so suppose today our real GDP decreases, so the economy goes through recession. With recession, our demand goes down. By the way, this is called an aggregate demand. I need more room. You're gonna learn more of this in later chapters, okay? So aggregate demand goes down. When aggregate demand goes down, that means price level goes down. And that's called deflation. Now, is this good? Of course it's not good because we have a lower real GDP here. The economy is in recession. So if you look at our US economy, let me show you the graph again. The only time you might see a very brief period of deflation was this time right here. See that? About 2008, 2009, that's when the red curve just dipped below the zero line. So that was a brief time of deflation. And the reason why that is because this time was our Great Recession. The economy was going way down. Okay, so that's why if you have deflation, it might be a good thing for the economy, but more than likely that's a symptom of a bigger problem. Alright guys, so that's it for this chapter. Have any question, let me know. Okay, bye bye.